The new Premier League season kicks off this weekend, with the battle for the title expected to be fiercer than ever. With me are sports reporters Nick Howson and Tony Mogan. And guys, who are your favourites for the title this season?
Well, I think it's going to be far more formulaic than last season. Maybe we started with maybe 6 contenders last term. I think it's going to be more like 3 really this year. Obviously, the champions Manchester City, Chelsea, who have improved, very well in the summer, and obviously have a manager in Jose Mourinho eager to win a piece of silverware after a couple of barren years. And I think Arsenal also, I think they deserve to be recognised as pre-season contenders. Certainly, they've ended their trophy drought now. They've won the traditional curtain raiser against Manchester City at Wembley in the Community Shield. So for me, it's 3. We're not going to see the great deal of numbers. I think that everyone else is going to be contesting for that 4th Champions League spot, I think.
Yeah, the top 3 do seem to have sort of addressed the issues that maybe separated them from Manchester City last season. Arsenal have sort of got this pressure off them now after winning the FA Cup. The squad is a bit more infused. They know what they're capable of now, which is a stark contrast to the start of last season when there was this perpetual shadow hanging over what they could do. Chelsea, they've had a season under Mourinho when he's been able to cast off players who didn't quite fit into his system and what he believed the club could deliver under him. He's brought in players who can do that, and as we've seen from Mourinho in the past, he's at his most successful when he has a squad of players working for him and working to his exact tactics, his exact instructions on the pitch. And when there's a team like that who are working for him in that respect, without any cause for objection or any cause for concern in his part, it is a gap that's been closed in that respect for Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make about Arsenal, is that whereas Chelsea and Manchester City, even last season, they had squads capable of winning the title and they had so much depth. I think Arsenal have now got that as well. Yes, they've got the confidence from having won the FA Cup and ended the drought, etc., etc. But they now have a depth, particularly in midfield. I mean, I think the midfield is actually probably the best in the Premier League at the moment in terms of the amount of the bodies they can call on and how they're going to fit everyone into that midfield. I'm looking forward to see how Arsene Wenger sort of tackles that problem. But I feel maybe at centre back, maybe they're a little bit lightweight, but otherwise they've got all areas of the pitch covered with sufficient quality.
It's interesting that the 2 that you've left out are England's 2 most successful clubs, Manchester United and Liverpool. We have Liverpool, who, despite the loss of Suarez, pushed Manchester City so close last season, and Manchester United, who, whilst it was a dire year last year under David Moyes, appear rejuvenated under new manager Louis van Gaal. Do you not think those 2 sides stand a chance?
I think that in Manchester United's case, I think they finished 22 points behind the champions City in the end. A new manager in Louis van Gaal who hasn't had enough time to really impose his style on the team yet. There have been very few changes in personnel. If anything, the club go into it as far as a squad-wise weaker than they did under David Moyes. They'll start the season with 2 of their best players missing. So I think that 22-point gap is going to be very difficult to make up and to make them contenders. I think they'll have a better season. But it will be difficult to be contenders for the title if you look at what the other 3 have done in the window. But as for Liverpool, again, they can look at it quite simply. Their top scorer and their best player has left. It's almost impossible to replace him like for like. They're doing their very best with 1 or 2 shrewd signings, and unfortunately, inevitable they're going to fall back. I don't see either of them contesting for the title. I think it's all about 4th for them really.
Yeah, in the case of Liverpool, it's understandable. There's no direct replacement for Suarez. There's only so much a manager can do in that predicament. But there has been, in my opinion, a case of too many players who could come in and simply, for lack of a better term, do a job effectively in key areas of the team up front, which is not particularly good enough when you're looking to reshape your team. Because I believe Brendan Rodgers will have to do that in respect. The Suarez-Sturridge partnership that blew the Premier League apart last season, it has to be done away with. Obviously, the player's not there, the system has to be done away with. And that, in a similar respect to Van Gaal, has to do as well. He has to find a new rhythm in the team. Brendan Rodgers may have to do likewise without their best player, which takes time to work. And in the Premier League, you don't have time to establish that straight away. And the gaps will open up. And I think that will be there to be seen at the end of the season, really.
I guess with all summers before a new Premier League season are defined by the transfer window, the various comings and goings. Out of all the title challengers, who do you think has set themselves up best in terms of new signings?
think we touched on it a little bit when we identified them as maybe even the favourites. I think Chelsea have moved very decisively in the window. If you talk about filling the positions that they needed, strengthening the most, Jose Mourinho has done that, and he talked about it for most of the season actually, not having a proper striker. Well, he's got one now in Diego Costa, who performed admirably for the Atletico Madrid side. He shot La Liga in winning it and reached the Champions League final as well, although his influence in those two decisive matches was very limited due to injury. His impact is going to be absolutely vital. It's very interesting to see how he gets on, given that Chelsea's high-profile attacking signings of late have actually failed in the end. You know, look at Andrei Shevchenko, look at Fernando Torres. Big money spent on them, and they both have performed woefully for Chelsea. Obviously, one of them still remarkably still there. So interesting to see how Costa's able to brush off that tag. He had a poor World Cup, finished the season injured. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. There's a lot of onus on him. The other signing, I suppose, being Thibaut Courtois from getting him back after a 3-year loan spell at Atletico Madrid. I think there are two questions over both of those players. I think Courtois, you know, as much as Costa, because he may well be the best goalkeeper in the world, but he doesn't. The Premier League is a different animal, and how he gets on, you know, excuse the cliche, how he gets on a cold Tuesday night at Stoke, windy conditions, you know, players being physical with him. Yes, he's going to get fouled a few times. He's not going to get decisions. That's the nature of English football. How he copes with that would be very, very interesting. So in short, you know, I think Chelsea have improved the best, but I think there are questions over one or two of the key individuals they brought in.
Yeah, I think from Arsenal's perspective, we've sort of come to associate Arsenal's summer with their lack of transfer activity, I should say. But we've seen Arsene Wenger act swiftly in addressing right back and the goalkeeper's positions where he was lacking. In right back's case, a first choice and a second choice option, and a reliable backup now in David Ospina. But the headline signing was, of course, Alexis Sanchez. And it just, again, shows that Arsene Wenger has this renewed impetus in the transfer market for the second year running. He's brought one of La Liga's best players to the club. Of course, there are going to be reservations about his ability to handle the transition in terms of the lack of a winter break, the excess in matches, the cold nights in Stoke, etc. But it does sort of redefine the club's outlook, the healthy position they are in to do these things in. I think we can expect more from the club in the coming weeks. He's already demonstrated, Wenger that is, that he is keen to address key positions, and I think he realises the fact that there is need for a holding midfielder as well. Off the pitch, one of the things that has curtailed Arsenal seasons in the past has been this relentlessly bad luck with injuries. I'd be fairly confident in saying Arsenal have had more players in the physio room than any other club in the Premier League over the course of the season.
They had more players, days with players injured last season than anyone else.
Yeah, that says it all. And I think Arsene Wenger has realised that he's appointed his new fitness coach, Chad Forsyth, who worked at the German side at the World Cup. The appointment in itself realises or suggests that Arsene Wenger has realised there is a problem, and he's made moves to address it. And if that pays off, if he has Aaron Ramsey for a full season, if he has Jack Wilshere for a full season, the strength in numbers that they will have in that case will be a whole new dawn for Arsenal in terms of challenging, if it pays off.
And I think finally with Manchester City, I think they've operated very subtly in the window, brought in one or two names that are not particularly high profile, not massive fees, although you know Mangala has joined for a bit big price there. You know, in Mangala they've filled a void there in terms of the central defence. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of Nastasic's role now, because he barely got a look in last season with Di Michelis, and he was a bit, you know, his performances were haphazard at best. But they filled a role there. In Fernando, they've got probably a proper central midfield player there, who can operate. You know, if Yaya Toure decides to go forward, he can operate with Fernandinho. Hopefully, that means the end of Javi Garcia's reign in the Premier League, which was inauspicious to say the least. So they you know, there's not been a great deal of additions there from City, but I think they filled the positions they needed. They've got Caballero, of course, as well, who will certainly put pressure under Joe Hart. I mean, that's one of the best number twos in the Premier League there. behind the England #1. But I've been impressed in some ways with the way City have done it. Just Tinker, not lost any, offloaded one or two sort of players. Deadwood, Gareth Barry obviously didn't play, but was at Everton, got rid of him. So yeah, no, I think City have done a good job as well.
So you had to go for final predictions on who's going to win the title?
Well, I think because they've got the best manager in the league, and I do believe on some level, although I do have reservations, I do believe that on some level Costa and Courtois will excel to an extent. I think Chelsea are the overwhelming favourites for me. Eden Hazard, one of the best players in the Premier League, easily on his day, and they've got so much depth of quality. Obviously Nemanja Matic as well, his influence in central midfield alongside Cesc Fabregas. So we haven't even mentioned, that's a world-class central midfield partnership. That's capable of winning the Champions League, let alone the Premier League. So yeah, Chelsea for me.
Yeah, I can't look past Chelsea myself either. That starting 11 that Mourinho has moulded over the course of the year and this summer, it's one of the best in recent memory in the Premier League, on paper, let's say. Things can go wrong if Diego Costa struggles to find his feet, if Fabregas cannot re-immerse himself in a central position, having not played there in a couple of seasons. But yeah, it's easy to say on paper, it looks very formidable and very unbeatable.
Well, for all our Premier League coverage, go to our website, ibtimes.co.uk/sport.